system that makes the parties possible. And that means accepting our personal responsibility to do everything we humanly can do to carry the truth about civil turmoil to every man, woman, and child in America. Now, ladies and gentlemen, none of these proposals will produce results, and nothing else you may suggest will do so either, unless and until we get right down to the heart of the problem, the life force of the revolution itself. We must discover the identity of those individuals, both above and below, who consciously are furthering the communist program for revolution, and then remove them from their positions of trust and leadership. Anything less than that will be totally futile, because we'll merely be running around trying to put out 1 or 2 fires over here, while they're busy setting 10 new ones over there. Now, of course, the minute you begin to think along these lines, you'll become the target of a whole barrage of attacks. You'll be called a witch hunter, a McCarthyite, a right-wing extremist, and other delicate phrases that are well designed to intimidate the average person into silence. If that doesn't work, then you'll be called a fascist, or at least a dictator, because supposedly you want to deny basic constitutional freedoms to a small group of Americans just because they happen to hold political views that are different from yours. How many times have you heard that? And you know, at first it sounds almost convincing, but the argument is a trap. And the bait inside that trap is the hidden assertion that the Communist Party is merely a political party. Now, if it were a political party and that's all, then of course we would have to grant them all the same constitutional rights and immunities as other loyal American citizens. But if the Communist Party is not a political party, if it is in fact a supranational organization dedicated to world conquest, if in addition to political means it also uses military means, economic means, propaganda means, bribery, blackmail, treason, murder, and any other means that suit its purposes, then its members are not political by nature, are not loyal to the United States, and have no legal or moral claim to constitutional liberties. There's no such thing as absolute freedom. For every liberty, an equal and opposite restraint is required. For example, in order for us to enjoy freedom of speech, it's necessary to deny others the freedom to come in here and break up this meeting. The logic of liberty is that it must stop short of the liberty to destroy itself. And if we're to preserve the freedoms we cherish in this land, then we mustn't be tricked by clever propagandists into giving the Communist Party the freedom it seeks to destroy freedom for us all. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close this presentation with 2 observations that I know you may not want to hear, but they must be made nevertheless. The first is that this struggle in which we're now engaged, in a very real sense, is more deadly than war. Call it what you will, Cold War, revolution, struggle, whatever. The present stakes are higher than in any other war we've ever known. After all, why do we dread war? Well, there are 3 reasons: death, destruction, and human suffering. But ladies and gentlemen, if communism should ever come to America, we'll face more death, destruction, and human suffering than any people in history has ever faced at the hands of their invading conquerors. And it would make no difference whether the road to communism were traveled violently or non-violently. The so-called expropriation of the capitalists that would lie at the end of that road would constitute one of the greatest bloodbaths of history. Now, the second observation is related to the first. It is simply that we have now passed the point of painless solutions and parlor patriotism. There was a time, and not too long ago, I think, when we could have pulled ourselves out of this without too great a sacrifice on the part of anyone. All that would have been necessary would have been for us to take an interest in the domestic affairs of our nation and to insist that our elected representatives merely enforce the laws that were then on the books to protect us from internal subversion and to keep the enemy outside the gates. But we didn't. Instead, we slept. And one by one, those laws were stricken down by the Supreme Court. Congress failed to repair the damage, and our defenses are no more. Now the enemy is inside our gates. He is on our streets. He is in our halls of Parliament. And now there is hell to pay. Our enemy is not going to leave quietly just because we suddenly discover him and ask him to go. Hardly. The nature of tyranny is such that, like the barb on an arrow, it goes in easily. But the price of pulling it out is a piece of flesh. Now let me be more specific. Before we finally win this battle, and I should hasten to say that there's no doubt in my mind that we're going to win. I'm increasingly convinced of this. But before we finally do see victory, it's now inevitable that some of us, even in this room, will lose our lives in the communist revolution that already is raging around us. I can't tell you who it's going to be, of course. But I can tell you that it'll make no practical difference whether we're resisting at the time or whether we're merely trying to hide. Most of the casualties will occur because people just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, I mention this not to suggest that we all grab our guns and groceries and head to the hills. In many ways, this too would be playing right into the hands of the communists. No, I mention it for only one reason, and that is to stress the seriousness of the challenge that now confronts this nation. It's literally a question of life and death for all of us. And it's about time the American people began to face up to that fact and to act accordingly. I have no idea of what each of you is going to do in the critical days that lie ahead. It may be much, it may be little, it may be nothing at all. I don't know. Only you can answer that question. But ladies and gentlemen, whatever it is you decide to do for your country, do it soon. Do it now. Every minute that you delay further will add dearly to the price of ultimate victory. Thank you.